You might look at yourself in the mirror in a few years when he carries on Putin invading other countries. Get off your Putin fanboy. People like you to be useful idiots. Don't, please, with a straight face, try and tell me that Russia did not start this war 3 years ago. Specifically on Ukraine, I agree with both Johnson and Starmer.
It's really come to something when, having spent a lifetime myself fighting against NATO and American wars, it's the Americans that are trying to stop the war, and Piers Morgan, Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer who are trying to keep it going. This war did not begin 3 years ago. You very well know that it began in 2014. You very well know that it began with a coup against the elected president of Ukraine, backed by Victoria Nuland and supported by you. You very well know that the criminalization of the Russian language, which followed hard on the heels of that coup, was the proximate reason for an uprising in the east of the country. You very well know that Zelensky and his predecessor rained down shot and shell on the people of East Ukraine for 8 years before Putin intervened. and that 14,000 people, most of them women and children, were killed. You're always telling us how much you love the Jews. You're supporting a regime which puts up statues to Nazi collaborators, to generals of the Galician division of the SS. You have lied about the origin of this war, about the duration of this war, about the course of this war, and now having caused you and your war party the death of 1 million Ukrainians while claiming to love Ukrainians, you're now calling for British lives to be lost.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg. And yes, that's connected with Ukraine, Russia, that segment I played from Turncoat Don, where he's on Piers Morgan. However, there is a connection because of Piers Morgan and his bullshit. But I will say one nice thing about Piers Morgan on his show, Uncensored, Piers Morgan Uncensored. He usually will have one or two left-wing guests on the show. Yeah, he has right-wing people and centrist neo-libs out there to outnumber them. I understand that, but he usually brings out left-wing voices, and those left-wing voices can put up a good fight. So, and George Galloway was one of the guests on the show in recent past, and that was Turncoat Don's comedic take on it, which is pretty accurate. How are y'all today? I see Kameshwari Kate is here, and well, I was relatively on time. I had it at 6 o'clock earlier, 7 o'clock, 7:30 or something like that. Now 7:15 and 7:30. I was like, well, I'm going to go with 7:55 because I had to have dinner, and afterwards I had to shave and shower and be presentable. So that explains that. The repercussions of working graveyard shift would do that to you. Let's see. We had Cowboy Kitty here. How are you doing today, my friend? Great seeing you here. And we have Warren. Hello, you wonderful people. And it's a wonderful audience. I'm glad each and every one of you are here. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. Yes, one of my many countdowns. And Animus, good evening to you all. Desert Mantis. Well, Willie by far has the best countdowns on the interweb. Thank you. Max Sorry Jay says, this is the Willy Bragg Show. How are you, Max? And we had Game.film. Happy Monday and free Palestine, fam. Isn't that the truth? And we have Rabbi Shmuley's used dildos. You're all anti-Semites. And my reaction to that is, no, we're not. And I got all the Woody Allen movies in my DVD collection to prove otherwise that false claim. So anyway, I want to talk about something that is beginning to be almost like old news. Old news at this point, but I need to talk about it because I also have my take on this issue. So thank you. Pro-Semite, anti-Zionist, your artificial clown show. Exactly. Yeah, there's no anti-Semitism in criticizing Israel. So want to make that clear. And for the few that do that, those who do it because they hate Jewish people, they can fuck off. But legitimate criticism and legitimate calls on what is objectively a genocide is not any more hatred of the Jewish people than hating Cambodia for the Khmer Rouge doing what they did in 1970, 75 to 79 to the Cambodian people, or what some fanatics did on 9/11. It's no more of that. It's called man's humanity to man. And it is objectively an act of evil what's going on in Gaza by the Israeli government. Doesn't mean that Jews are evil. It just means that people in that government are the ones engaging in that. So want to make that clear. So anyway, so what I want to discuss is, as I said, I was talking about him earlier, and that was, Pierce Morgan, who I cannot stand. I mean, he's just an absolute asshat, if there ever was one. I mean, he's always taking the side of the establishment, the warmongers, and the right wing, and the facade of centricity, shit liberal mentality. That's kind of how I see him. So, as far as I'm concerned, overall, Pierce Morgan can fuck off as far as I'm concerned. But I want to go and, as I said, state the obvious about the one good thing he'll have usually a left-wing guest on his show, and a panel of wolves who are right-wing and neoliberal, but they usually can handle themselves pretty good. Well, recently on Pierce Morgan Uncensored, they had this asshole here, Rabbi Shmuley, and he is a fanatical Zionist and a demagogue who will call people, anti-Semite if you dare engage in any criticism of Israel. So, as I said, and also, on the panel was the GrayZone's Aaron Matei, who is also Jewish, but very, very, very critical of what's going on in Israel, and one hell of a journalist. He's been more correct than incorrect about things, especially regarding the situation in Syria, proving that it was not the previous Assad regime that was doing chemical attacks on the population or what have you. And in fact, if anybody who knows just a microcosm of what goes on or what went on in Syria under Assad would know that he protected a lot of people from actual fanatics. But the U.S. had a hard-on for taking him out, and unfortunately, they succeeded, and which I do think was pretty sad to see happening. But as I said, Aaron Matei, he takes a lot of shit from people, and in spite of Anna Kasparian's meltdown against him and Cenk Uygur's axe to grind with him, and all of that, and Senator Chris Coons of Pennsylvania kicking him off of a train just because he did his job as a journalist. Well, it seems like he gets the just to get the bad end of everything. Seems like. So what I want to talk about, like for example, hold on a second here. For example, here, right here, as you can see in this old Gray Zone video from last year, almost 2 years ago, rather, you can see what's happened to Aaron Matei.
Okay, well, Aaron, moving right along, you're not popular in Kiev.
I'm not. No. Myself and another Gray Zone. Yes, a Kiev. Myself and another Gray Zone colleague, Anya Parmpil, we just apparently got added to what's called the Ukraine kill list. This is a list maintained by. This comes from the. I haven't followed this too closely. This comes from the Ukrainian government, right? This list.
Yeah, I mean the Ukrainian Interior Ministry supports this list.
And here's the thing: Aaron Matei and Anya Parampil, that's Max Blumenthal's wife, are on the kill list by the Ukraine government. Well, unofficially by the Myra Barretts is not officially with the government, but they're connected with the government, if that makes any sense. And so, as I said, it seems like he just gets the bad end of the deal a whole lot. But when you have integrity that other journalists don't have for not doing properly their job, this is the price you pay, And I think history will look kindly on journalists like Aramente. So this is from Piers Morgan, Uncensored, and he has an exchange with Rabbi Shmuley, as you'll see here. So I'll be playing this video of the show and commenting accordingly. So let's go right here and let's start.
ICE has arrested the Palestinian leader of Columbia University's anti-Israel protests, Mahmoud Halil. Many people think this is a violation of free speech under the First Amendment. Others think that they're perfectly entitled, this administration, to start deporting those who openly supported Hamas. What do you say about this?
I think that was one of the most courageous acts of moral conscience that we've seen in the U.S. in many years. And it outraged the
students just shouting and yelling outside. It's not that courageous. Rabbi Shmuley, an attack on free speech. Many have said that. What do you say to that?
Deport him now, because he's not promoting free speech. He's promoting incitement to violence.
It is quite rich to hear Rabbi Shmuley. He's pretty much a three-trick pony. He's either interrupting, or he's lying, or he's smearing people.
This is what we call classic anti-Semitism.
You think your narrative is made up of facts?
I see you as the modern-day followers of the Nazis.
Aaron, you can't seriously be saying that Rabbi Shmuley is a successor to the Nazis.
He's a Nazi.
President Trump's plan to turn Gaza into a Middle Eastern Riviera, embellished with a vivid AI video featuring Elon Musk eating hummus at the beach, has certainly divided opinion, to put it mildly. More importantly, it's kickstarted a serious debate about what happens to Gaza after the war. Arab leaders have now united around their own 5-year, $53 billion reconstruction plan that would see a temporary government of independent peacekeepers put in charge of the Strip. No Palestinians would be displaced. The problem is that neither Israel nor Hamas would be involved, and therefore neither of them is going to accept it. Israel is currently blocking aid from entering Gaza to pressure Hamas into accepting a temporary extension of the current truce. This weekend, wrongly in my view, it also cut off its supply of electricity. Well, Hamas says the second phase of a ceasefire, involving the full withdrawal of Israeli troops, should begin as agreed instead. Well, to debate all this, I'm joined in the studio by America's rabbi and author of Holocaust Holiday, Rabbi Shmuley, to the journalist and pushback host for the Gray Zone, Aramente, and the Palestinian-American commentator, Omar Badal. Welcome to all of you, and welcome to you, Rabbi Shmuley, here in London. Let me start, if I may, with you, Omar, about this. I've got to say, when I saw that Israel was yanking its power supply and fuel supply into Gaza, knowing how many innocent children have already died in Gaza during this war, many thousands, I just thought it was an act of inhumanity, which Israel doesn't need to do and shouldn't have done.
It certainly is an act of inhumanity, and one that is obviously designed not just to demonstrate dominance and bullying and increase the suffering of the people of Gaza, which has been Israel's goal for a very long time, but more precisely in this moment, to try to figure out a way out of the ceasefire in which the Palestinians get blamed in some way. And what they're trying to do is provoke a response that would then justify the continuation of the slaughter. And you have to pay attention to the fact that Israel has been violating the ceasefire over and over again. They've killed over 100 Palestinians since the ceasefire was announced. They have prevented the entry of adequate humanitarian aid, as was stipulated in the terms of the ceasefire agreement. And they're just looking for any way possible to try to fall short on their obligations to trigger some kind of response. And it's directly in response to the fact that the entire world now seems to be moving away from Israel's ethnic cleansing plan for Gaza that Trump has endorsed. You've had this Arab proposal that has come together about rebuilding Gaza, endorsed by many European nations. But Israel's eyes remain laser focused on the need to ethnically cleanse Gaza and empty it of Palestinians. They want to finish the job of this genocide. And right now, I think this is why they're pushing for these provocations.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, you're...
Also, keep in mind what the thing is about. And the thing basically is about this, that if there is a ceasefire that leads to a permanent ceasefire, which means some semblance of peace, even even though Israel and the Palestinians do not get fully what they want, even under the very best of circumstances on either side. The moment that there is anything that resembles a ceasefire that looks like either a positive peace or a negative peace, which means pre-October 7th, 2023, where basically through things like the Abraham Accord, where basically some of the Arab states recognize Israel, but as far as the Palestinians is concerned, there is a fuck 'em attitude as a result of the Abraham Accords. Anything that looks like status quo prior to October 7th, or even better than the status quo, would mean that more than likely Benjamin Netanyahu will go to prison for corruption charges. Benjamin Netanyahu sincerely wants to be a fascist toward the Palestinians and commit the genocide, but he also wants to keep his ass out of prison. Keep that in mind.
Response.
There is almost no electricity in any of the Arab world except what Israel provides Gaza. Syria has almost zero electricity. Lebanon goes through constant blackouts. Egypt, constant blackouts. Iraq is an oil superpower. They have no electricity. Israel has been extraordinarily kind to Gaza since 2006 when the monster murder terrorists of Hamas took.
Well, it doesn't. But Israel doesn't pay. Doesn't give us a freedom. They get paid.
Well, it's all of us, including the grandson of the.
Sorry about that.
Away from
Hamas,
Israel's ethnic cleansing.
I'm sorry. Hamas exists because the Israeli government funded and groomed Hamas back in the mid to late 80s when the PLO orbited around Soviet influence. It was a Cold War measure, kind of similar to what the United States did in Afghanistan by backing the Mujahideen rebels and backing what would become Al-Qaeda later on with Osama bin Laden. And Hamas is simply blowback for Israel interfering with the Palestinian movement, trying to undermine the PLO. And that's what's happened right there. And you know, it's blowback, just like what happened in Afghanistan became blowback on 9/11. So October 7th was Israel's 9/11 in that regard. Scarily, very scary, like, and so anyway, we'll let them.
So, but Israel doesn't pay, doesn't give this for free, and they get paid.
Well, it's heavily subsidized, but the real
hang on, it's not. No, to be clear, it's Israel gets $11 million a month for supplying the power into Gaza, which is 50% or more of the power that Gaza receives in entirety. And after October the 7th, within a couple of weeks, Israel cut by 90% the amount of power they were sending in, and they're now cutting the remaining 10% plus the fuel. So it's not an act of charity by Israel. They get paid significant sums of money for the energy that they supply.
Israel has a $700 billion GDP. $11 million means absolutely nothing. It is an act of charity. And the real question is, why didn't Hamas, who have been in power for 20 years, use quadruple the amount of Marshall aid that Europe used for Britain to rebuild their cities after the Second World War, Germany, to build their own power plants? Hamas stole all that money, enriched Yahya Sinwar. Do you know that Yasser Arafat's daughter was just ranked by Forbes to be worth $5 billion? This money was stolen. They should have built their own power plants. They shouldn't be dependent on Israel. This is the story of Hamas. And what I would say to my friend Omar is, if you hate Israel so much and you falsely accuse it of genocide, let's imagine for one moment that Trump says to all the Jews of Israel, 6 million, look, guys, 75-year experiment of Israel, constant wars, everyone hates you. Move to Florida, and Ron DeSantis is pro-Israel. And I grew up in Miami. And all 6 million decide, you know what, let's close Israel, not for any tragic means. Tell me, Omar, what then happens to the people of Gaza? Do they suddenly have liberty and democracy and freedom? No. Women are still killed in honor killings by their cousins, inspired by Hamas if they have a boyfriend. Gays are still castrated and hung in city squares. Gazans who want political freedom are granted none. There hasn't been one election since 2000. Take Israel out of the Middle East.
Okay, that's the closest thing to a fair point. However, Israel's not that great on gay rights, as it turned out, and I'm kind of surprised they're not. But you know, they don't have same-sex marriage in Israel, and it's increasingly becoming a theocratic state at this point. So theocratic that it might even be something that would offend Rabbi Shmuley. That's how far to the right that they are right now. And once Israel gets to be super theocratic, they'll probably start doing the same shit that you see done by Israel's neighbors. So for him to go and try to, what's the term is used, pink diaper the situation, it runs hollow in my eyes.
And the Middle East and any country run by Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, are still dumps where people have no human rights. Stop blaming Israel. You know the problem is not Israel. Here's proof. Because the countries in the Middle East, like the Abraham Accords, so we're talking Bahrain, we're
fuck Abraham Accords.
Talking about the UAE, we're talking Dubai, we're talking Abu Dhabi. They have brilliant economies and they never complain about Israel and they hate Hamas. They want to see technology. You are defending the status quo and you want the Gazans, my innocent Palestinian brothers and sisters, to serve as nothing but bargaining chips, leverage against Israel. Why would you want?
What about the Israeli hostages captured by Hamas that Netanyahu obviously don't give a shit about? Spare me your crocodile tears, you asshole.
Them to stay in that hovel, in that dump. I have been in Gaza. Have you? I was in Gaza before the war. I was there in 2001 with the Reverend Al Sharpton. It was a dump then. Why won't you allow the Gazans to have a plebiscite, to have a referendum? Let them decide where they want to live, if they can live in Jordan or if they can live in Saudi Arabia with a garden.
All right,
and if people try to let the Palestinians determine their own destiny, the CIA will go and make sure that doesn't happen. So it's easy for Rabbi Shmuley to say, well, why doesn't the Palestinians do A, B, C, and D? Because if they attempt to do A, B, C, and D, that's positive for the people, then other forces will make sure that doesn't carry through, whether it's the CIA or the Mossad or whatever. So there is that.
Rather than you deciding that they should be bargaining chips against Israel.
Let me go to Aaron to respond first. I'll come back to you, but Aaron, your response to that. Piers Morgan Uncensored is now proudly independent. If you like the show, we ask only one thing. Subscribe on YouTube and follow.
No, I don't subscribe.
An inhumane, crippling...
That was a little announcement.
Thank you.
There we go.
Also in the description. Now on with the show.
There's a lot to respond to. There was an election in Gaza.
2006.
People of yes, and what
20
happened
years ago, there was an election for 4 years, and they haven't allowed
I didn't interrupt you, Rabbi. I didn't interrupt you.
Thank you.
There was an election. The people in the West Bank and Gaza voted for Hamas, and how did Israel and the U.S. respond? Not being generous to Gaza, as Rabbi Shmuley falsely claimed, putting it under an inhumane, crippling siege, depriving it of all the basics people needed to survive. Even certain types of hummus were banned from entering Gaza under Israeli rule. That's the benevolent Israeli occupation that Rabbi Shmuley wants us to believe in. The reason why Hamas turned to armed resistance against Israel on October 7th is because they tried all other means. When Palestinians launched the Great March of Return in 2018, tens of thousands of people marching peacefully, they were gunned down by Israeli snipers. When Hamas leaders accepted the Arab League peace proposal of a two-state solution, accepting just 22% of Palestine, their historic homeland, Israel said they wouldn't even discuss it. So that answers the question of why Hamas has turned to armed resistance, because when they tried to pursue the diplomatic path, Israel has ignored them. And that's the fundamental problem here. Rabbi Shmuley mentioned countries in the region that don't have electricity, whereas the other countries thrive. Well, all those countries that Rabbi Shmuley mentioned, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, they share another thing in common with the Palestinians. They've been relentlessly attacked by U.S.-Israeli aggression for years. The Iraq War, for example. Syria, Israel's stolen the Golan Heights, is currently stealing more territory today. Lebanon, Israel invades in 1982, kills tens of thousands of people, occupied it for many years, recently undertook a new round of massacres. So if Rabbi Shmuley cared about the people of the region and all Israel apologists, what they would simply do is say, for the first time in our history, we're actually going to accept the right of Palestinians to have their own land, not come up with these fantasies of ethnic cleansing, which Israel has tried to do since its founding in 1948. Say, we're actually going to recognize the rights of Palestinians to have self-determination, which everybody in this world has. And the reason why they don't accept that is because they're a Jewish supremacist state founded on this idea that Jews are superior, have a biblical right to all this land, and that's why they're pursuing their current path.
Aaron, let me ask you this. Aaron, on this issue of...
And what Aaron Matei says also come close to home, because his father, Gabor Matei, is a Holocaust survivor. He survived the Holocaust, and he was very young when it was happening, but he's a Holocaust survivor. And at one time, Gabor Mate, my understanding, was a Zionist. He lived in Israel for many years. Not necessarily the racist right wing variation that's proposed by Rabbi Shmuley and the Netanyahu government. He was part of what was labor Zionism, which is a dead ideology today because Israel moved so far to the right over the span of decades, to the point where the country is becoming the very thing that they claim to create the country to protect the population from. Yes, I will say the name of the prime minister, Adolf Netanyahu. I will go there because that is basically what he's becoming. He's becoming the modern incarnation of the very thing that they're supposedly want to say never again. And never again should not just apply to one group of people. It should apply to all humanity. So, and that's where I stand on that. And so Rabbi Shmuley can sit there and, excuse me, I just ate a little while ago. Rabbi Shmuley can just sit there and be a sanctimonious asshole and self-righteous about this whole situation. But, as I said, when people are objectively suffering, you got social media right now that's showing to the world what's going on. It's not like it was 35, 40 years ago where it would be reported on the 3 News Network and people just accept what CBS, ABC, or NBC had to say about the matter, or CNN on the weekends or something. They are seeing more than what just the mainstream media are willing to show. And so anyway, I'll let them continue.
On this issue of power, for example, electricity, I've explained how the process works. So Israel supplies more than half of Gaza's power. They get $11 million a month from the Palestinian Authority, which is gained from tax revenue from Palestinians. So it's a quid pro quo, if you like. But as we look forward here, my question, and I think it's a perfectly good one for Rabbi Shmuley there, is Hamas were given billions of dollars. Over $6 billion is reported to have been given. And they could have gone one of many ways, right, with that money. They could have built a more prosperous Gaza if they wanted to. But instead, they spent or squandered that money on effectively building a terror network amongst the civilian population and then unleashing hell on October the 7th against the people of Israel. What they didn't do was make Gaza self-sufficient for energy or water or anything else. And my question would be, well, why didn't they? And as a result of that, what's your view of what's now happened?
Well, my answer is they were not allowed to. Israel subjected Gaza under Hamas's control to a criminal blockade, preventing the very reconstruction materials that Gaza would need to build the electricity. They bombed Gaza's power plants, took it offline. They've destroyed the water infrastructure well before October 7th. The basics that Gazans need to live have been denied to them. An Israeli minister famously said, we're going to put the people of Gaza on a diet, by which he meant, we're going to allow in just enough food so that people can survive without a full-blown starvation crisis, but they're going to be hungry. So if you want to know why Gaza has not built up the infrastructure that it needs to survive, the answer is the Israeli occupation. Even before October 7th, the UN was warning that within a few years, Gaza would not be livable because of the inhumanity of the siege. So there's your answer. You can criticize Hamas. There's plenty to criticize there. My friends who live in Gaza are not fans of Hamas. They would love to have somebody different. But I'm not going to hold occupied people accountable for the crimes of their occupiers. And unless you understand that Gaza has been subjected to a criminal blockade as part of one of the world's longest running and cruelest military occupations in the world, we're not going to be able to resolve this conflict.
Right, and Rabbi Shmuley, I mean, the clear reality, surely, is that unless you afford Palestinians the same basic human rights as their Israeli neighbors, you are never going to have peace in that region, ever. Why would you? Why, if one group of people, millions, are deprived the same basic fundamental human rights across a border as their neighbors, why would they not always want to resist that?
First of all, they were granted complete human rights. Israel enacted a total and complete military and civilian withdrawal from Gush Katif, Gaza, 2005. My children were some of the last, even though we're Americans, last children to actually plant trees on a Jewish holiday. They were cut down by Hamas later because all of this was used, everything was used in order to attack Israel. My issue with Aaron is that there's a difference between opinion and fact. Aaron, I say respectfully, I think that you have really permanently undermined your credibility by just such a stream of fabrication that it defies imagination. Did you really just say that the Palestinians only got 22% of the mandated Palestine? You know it's the exact opposite.
No, I didn't say that.
No.
Excuse me.
You said I
No,
shouldn't
didn't say
interrupt
that.
you, so you won't interrupt me. Thank you.
I didn't say
I
that.
appreciate your
Well,
respect.
he's disputing you said it. Hang on,
You didn't say it.
Well, what did he say? Hang on, let's just clarify.
I said that the Arab League offered Israel a huge compromise for Palestinians, in which Palestinians would accept just 22% of their historic homeland.
Okay, let's go to the facts. Let's go to the facts.
And get a
The
Palestinian
facts are, no, you won't
Israel
interrupt me,
wouldn't
please,
even
because I
accept
didn't interrupt you,
Palestinian
please.
compromise.
Listen,
They're hell-bent on
why don't you
occupation.
finish interrupting me, and when you're finished, then I'll continue. Go ahead, finish interrupting me.
I answered your question.
Thank you. So let me continue. Everyone.
Rabbi Shmuley expects everybody to sit there and listen to what he has to say, but he will interrupt anybody else who has anything to say in response, and then accuse people of interrupting him. What a fucking asshole.
Knows that Winston Churchill actually wrote that on a Sunday afternoon.
Winston Churchill was an anti-Semite, you asshole. He did not like the Jewish people. He accused them of starting the Bolshevik Revolution.
He created the nation of Transjordan. He was the colonial secretary. He cut off 80% of the Balfour Declaration 1917, biblically mandated Palestine, and he gave it to Jordan. It was a reward for people who don't live there, the Hashemites. He brought King Abdullah and his brother King Faisal. Faisal was kicked out of Syria. Then Abdullah was killed in Jordan. Somehow the Hashemites, continue there till this very day. They're not native Jordanians. You and I both know that. They cut off 80% of the Jewish homeland and created Transjordan. That is a fact. Winston Churchill. Now let's go on. Even then, with a 20% less, no, you're interrupting me again because you don't want to hear facts. But you're going to hear these facts, and then when I finish, I won't interrupt you. How about that?
Okay, sure.
And you're going to hear some facts later on, Shmuley. So, to counter your false facts.
Dialogue. 1936, You say that in 1936, the Peel Commission, launched by the British, was because of Arab violence before there was even a Jewish state. It started with an Arab blockade and a boycott, and then it became full violence. So they sent the Peel Commission, and the Peel Commission divided the country into two, and the Arabs rejected it. Then November 1947, in the Queen's Museum, which I drive by whenever I land in LaGuardia Airport or JFK, that was the UN headquarters. They voted again a partition plan where the Jews got a tiny bit of that 20%. The Arabs rejected it, launched two wars, 1947, 1948. 1956, Israel withdrew completely from the Sinai, which they conquered. 1967, after they conquered everything that we're debating right now, Moshe Dayan, the defense minister, went to the Arabs and said, we want to give it all back. They went to Khartoum and they responded with the three no's: no to recognition, no peace, and no legitimacy. These are all facts. You can destroy your credibility as a scholar if you wish. Finally, Ehud Olmert offered them 96% of the West Bank, and they rejected it. And then Bill Clinton, who we Jews don't really consider a great friend of Israel, wrote in his memoirs that he told Arafat,
Israel, Bill Clinton, not a friend of Israel. Bill Clinton is one of the biggest Zionist cucks out there, you moron.
I'm a failure, and you are the reason I'm a failure. We gave you everything. Now, finally, one final point. Well, Pierce, when you asked me a very valid question, why should the Palestinians not resist when they're given full rights? There are no soldiers in Gaza. Israel dismantled its own communities. They used their soldiers to break down houses of my wife's cousins. And then Aaron says there was a blockade and they could build anything. How did they build an underground network larger than the London Tube that I just took to get here? If there was a blockade, the London Tube is pretty impressive. Do you know that Hamas used the hundreds of billions of dollars they got not to build one bomb shelter, not one electricity plant, which could have answered Pierce's issue about they used it all to build a terror network for their fighters.
Israel will not allow the people of Gaza to have functioning infrastructure. They will not allow, even under the best of circumstances, will not allow the people to have functioning infrastructure. Stop blaming other people for the actions of a country that you are obviously in support of, that's committing the dysfunctionality of a society.
And then use babies and everybody. And you say about Jewish supremacy. I want to say unequivocally with a yarmulke and a beard. I believe as a Jew that God loves every Palestinian child as much as a Jew. And everyone that died is because of Hamas, Hamas. Right. Thank you.
If you're going to say that everybody dies because of Hamas, then you better be blaming Netanyahu, because remember, it was the Mossad that went and funded the Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza, and that local group became what is now Hamas today. Israel groomed Hamas. All that is evil committed by Hamas is made possible because the Israeli government permitted it to happen. Israel was warned by the Egyptian government prior to October 7th that there was going to be a possible Hamas attack. They disregarded. It's almost as if they wanted it to happen. So, and you can see the result.
Okay, Omar, I want you to respond to that.
Sure. I mean, first, it is quite rich to hear Rabbi Shmuley complain about anybody interrupting. He's pretty much a three-trick pony. He's either interrupting, or he's lying, or he's smearing people.
Oh, ad hominem. Are you really going to get into ad hominem this early in the debate? You really have to personalize it. Deal with the facts, please.
There's the first
Stop
trick.
the ad hominem attacks. Go ahead.
He's demonstrating it.
Please don't do the ad hominem,
his first trick for you right now. In fact, Piers, frankly, if your audience watching at home were playing a drinking game in which they took a shot every time he either lied or interrupted, half of your audience would be dead before.
This is just ad hominem. Do you know facts or not? Do you want to debate fact, or do you want to insult me?
Are you going to keep interrupting? Are you going to keep complaining about interrupting and then do your own interrupting? Are you just going to demonstrate your hypocrisy to everyone on television?
Here we go. Hypocrisy, you liar. We know what you think about Jews. Debate the facts. Forget.
Rabbi Shmuley, you know what you sound like? You know what you sound like just saying that, accusing somebody of anti-Semitism. And this is what I don't get about right-wingers like Shmuley. That you resort to identity politics. You weaponize identity politics. Could it be that you are criticized not because you wear a yarmulke and have a semi-curly red beard? Could it be because you're a fucking asshole? And assholes exist throughout humanity. Every religion has assholes. Every ethnic group has assholes. And you just a representation of one asshole in one ethnic group, which is not an attack on that ethnic group or that religion. This is basically just a sharp and truthful critique about who you are as an individual. I mean, people like yourself. And I don't mean a rabbi. I'm talking about people on your ideological side of the fence, regardless of what their identity is, will claim, oh, there's the left using the identity politics. The blacks are making a big deal about their oppression, and the Muslims are making a big deal about their oppression. The LGBTQ community are making a big deal about their oppression. Aren't you doing the same fucking thing? And people like yourself going to sit there and call out on other groups that do it. You're being a fucking hypocrite about it. Why don't you just take your criticism like a man? Okay.
The evil me and debate the facts.
Unbelievable level of hypocrisy. You are demonstrating your hypocrisy right now by continually interrupting.
Stop the insults. Try and stop.
I'll set the insults if that's even possible with dealing with people like you. Now, Rabbi Shmuley actually fully understands that the reason why there's no electricity in Gaza is because Israel. Can you be quiet? Can you be quiet and let me finish what I have to say? Rabbi Shmuley knows extremely well that the reason why there's no electricity in Gaza is because Israel bombs the infrastructure in Gaza and then puts Gaza under siege and does not allow Palestinians to rebuild their own power plants. They've created a situation of dependence where Gaza cannot survive on its own economically. It has to depend on Israel, and that is by design because Israel wants to be able to shut off the electricity at any point. Rabbi Shmuley knows this, but he tries to play on the uninformed audiences. He takes them for fools and hopes that they won't be able to see through the idiocy that he's actually demonstrating right now.
So now I'm an idiot.
Anybody with a functioning brain will understand very well that the reason why Gaza is not free is because Israel prevents it from being free.
Google more personal insults. You can't deal with a single historical fact that I said, so you've called me an idiot, hypocrite, a liar. Let me tell you.
You are.
See, this is what we call classic anti-Semitism.
You think your narrative is made up of facts? Are you kidding?
Classic anti-Semitism? No. He's just being accurate. He's just being accurate to the situation. This has nothing to do with your Jewish background. And I noticed that Aaron Matei is not taking any offense to the critique against Rabbi Shmuley because he knows it's the truth. And it's not because Rabbi Shmuley's Jewish. It's just because he's an asshole.
I quoted to you the Peel Commission, the UN, the Omer deal. You cannot respond to a single one. So what do you have to do? Ad hominem. Deal with me as a person and try to suppress your hatred for Jews. Thank you.
Yes, quiet down. Yeah, again, the smear of anti-Semitism. That's the second trick. Really, if people are taking shots, try to keep track of how much alcohol they're consuming at this point.
If Rabbi Shmuley is concerned about anti-Semitism, you can find anti-Semitism in an area that some people will say is very unlikely, but really it is likely when you think about it. Many of the evangelical fundamentalist Christians who masturbate over fantasies of getting ass fucked by Benjamin Netanyahu, those motherfuckers are the ones who are anti-Semitic. Because when you think about it, why do they support the creation of Israel? Because they want that land for themselves eventually, according to their twisted interpretation of Scripture. And they look at Jewish people as just temporary custodians for that physical piece of real estate. And they're wanting Israel and Iran to exchange nukes eventually. That is partly why they cheered Donald Trump ripping up the peace treaty between Iran and the United States several years ago, because they knew that the Iranians will go back to working on some kind of a nuclear weapons program. And not that I'm a fan of Iran, but why the fuck should they abide by an agreement that the United States basically told them to go fuck themselves over? So, Rabbi Shmuley, if there's anybody being a useful idiot, it is people like yourself. You're being a useful idiot to the John Hagees of the United States, who does not give a damn about your existence. As much as I despise you, I have more empathy for you than John Hagee would. And you're a piece of shit as far as in my eyes.
So the reason why there has not been a Palestinian state, and by the way, if you're going to pull up Bill Clinton, that's fine. By all means, why don't you try pulling up Jimmy Carter, who's been very clear about the fact that the reason why there has not been a resolution to this conflict is because Israel insists on maintaining an illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories and denies Palestinians any freedom. And so you hear Shmuley here claiming that Israel allows Palestinians to be completely free and have full rights, but that is belied by every single major human rights organization in the entire world. And so Shmuley was basically saying that you have to believe him and Israeli propagandists when it comes to the issue of human rights, instead of believing our own eyes, instead of believing major human rights organizations, and actually documented facts of what is unfolding on the ground. And that is that Palestinians have no freedom, no dignity, no opportunity, all due to Israel squeezing them under a brutal occupation and looking for ways to get rid of them. That is at the core of the so-called conflict.
Okay, let me ask you, Rabbi Shmuley, a different question, which is that it has been reported the Trump envoy to the Middle East is in direct talks now with Hamas. Should the White House be directly negotiating with a prescribed terror group in this way?
Well, I want to know whether the official hostage negotiator, Adam Boehler, has gone rogue, or whether these are under orders of our elected president, who has the mandate of the people, having won the popular vote, the electoral college vote. Because what Adam Boehler said yesterday, I think it was on CNN, was shocking. He not only went rogue and started speaking to Hamas when the president had tweeted 2 days earlier, giving Hamas a binary choice: release the hostages or face hell, and every one of your fighters will be killed. And he said that he would give Netanyahu everything that he needed. The president wrote this himself on Truth Social in order to annihilate every Hamas fighter, every terrorist dedicated to a second genocide, to a second Holocaust. Suddenly, Boehler comes along, goes behind the scenes. And by the way, Pierce, may I say, he criticized my dear friend, Ron Dermer, who was you probably know I was a rabbi at Oxford University for 11 years. Ron Dermer was my student president. I'm one of the people who inspired him to move to Israel. He's now a chief negotiator with for the hostages. He criticized Ron by name, which was very unfair. And then he said, Hamas aren't such bad people. They don't have horns. You know, it's like saying, Hitler was nice to his dog. I've heard that too. When you have a genocidal organization whose actual charter says that we are dedicated, not just to killing Rabbi Shmuley and all the IDF soldiers and all the women they gang raped. I was in the killing fields of Gaza 10 days after the bodies were still there, the stench of death was still there. When he says that they don't have horns and that they're nice people, you give them a degree of legitimacy, which is shocking. Imagine if people...
I know what he's talking about. He's claiming that Hamas had in their charter anti-Semitic language. It did at one time. It got rid of it in the year 2017. It got rid of the more archaic anti-Jewish language that was in their charter. And good for them for getting rid of that, those toxic words. But that's what he's acting like it's still all part of their charter or whatever. And I'm not saying that Hamas has love for Jewish people, but they gotten rid of it as a form of pragmatism. If they want to be seriously a good faith actor, they knew what they had to do. And so now the ball's in Israel's court. And here's the thing. when there was that temporary ceasefire, everybody stopped, and Israel started their attacks again, and everybody else resumed with their attacks. Maybe if Israel stopped attacking the people of Gaza, maybe the Houthis will stop, interfering in the Red Sea, and just maybe Hamas may also stop fighting back. And maybe if there was some kind of a way to have a peace where the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip can govern themselves and be sovereign from Israel, and a Palestinian state can be created, West Bank, maybe the fighting and the madness will stop on all sides. But, and I got to go in a few minutes, but the point I'm trying to make is that the ball is in Israel's court right now. It is up to Israel. Israel's the one that has the ability to stop all this shit by simply stopping this shit. But the more that they slaughter, the more out of favor they're going to be with the world. And the worse it's going to be, for everyone involved. It'd be obviously horrific for the Palestinians that lives in Gaza. This is not doing anybody in Israel any favors either. Because regardless, you're having people dying across the board. And that madness should stop. So the ball's in Israel's court. And I got to go in a few minutes. Anyway, if you go on Piers Morgan's Uncensored, you can see the full debate and all of that. So I will end this on a comedic note with this video here, and comment some more. So anyway, here we go.
My issue with Aaron is that there's a difference between opinion and fact. You can destroy your credibility as a scholar if you wish. And everyone that died is because of Hamas, Hamas. Stop blaming Israel. You know the problem is not Israel. There is almost no electricity in any of the Arab world except what Israel provides Gaza. It is an act of charity. They should have built their own power plants. They shouldn't be dependent on Israel. Israel has been extraordinarily kind to Gaza.
There's a lot to respond to. There was an election in Gaza.
2006.
The people of, yes. And what happened
20 years ago, there was an election for 4 years.
Excuse me.
And they haven't allowed
I didn't
elections.
interrupt you, Rabbi. I didn't interrupt you. There was an election. The people in the West Bank and Gaza voted for Hamas. And how did Israel and the U.S. respond? Not being generous to Gaza, as Rabbi Shmuley falsely claimed, putting it under an inhumane, crippling siege, depriving it of all the basics people needed to survive. Even certain types of hummus were banned from entering Gaza. That's the benevolent Israeli occupation that Rabbi Shmuley wants us to believe in. Israel subjected Gaza under Hamas's control to a criminal blockade, preventing the very reconstruction materials that Gaza would need to build the electricity. They bombed Gaza's power plants, took it offline. They've destroyed the water infrastructure well before October 7th. The basics that Gazans need to live have been denied to them. An Israeli minister famously said, we're going to put the people of Gaza on a diet, by which he meant we're going to allow in just enough food so that people can survive without a full-blown starvation crisis. So if you want to know why Gaza has not built up infrastructure that it needs to survive, the answer is the Israeli occupation. Even before October 7th, the UN was warning that within a few years, Gaza would not be livable because of the inhumanity of the siege. So there's your answer. You can criticize Hamas. There's plenty to criticize there. My friends who live in Gaza are not fans of Hamas. They would love to have somebody different. But I'm not going to hold occupied people accountable for the crimes of their occupiers. And unless you understand that Gaza has been subjected to a criminal blockade as part of one of the world's longest running and cruelest military occupations in the world, we're not going to be able to resolve this conflict.
And I think Turncoat Don is a great way to to kind of wrap things up here. And the Grapentine's point earlier, and let me scroll back really quick here. Let's see. I think this is this it? I think this might be it because I was responding. Sorry, Willie, I misunderstood. I heard smugly claim Hamas castrates boys and murder women. This has to be criticized by Aaron and everyone because they may be untrue. I know what that was about. Yeah, I thought you meant that I said that that Hamas did the castration or what have you and the murder, and I did not. What I was saying earlier, I think this is what you might be referring to. I said referring to Shmuley talking about the human rights and Israel supports that Hamas don't or whatever, and some of its neighbors. I basically was saying that Israel's not as positive on gay rights as people would think. And that's what I was saying. And if I said something about castration that sounded like was repeating Shmuley, that was not the intent. I think that might have been what you were referring to. I'm not sure. So, but anyway, I hope that clears things up in that regard. Let's see. And we have Snipe Hunter here. And we have Stephanie here. Hey, Willie. And Warren says, good show and good chat. And it comes right down to this, that I don't want anybody from either side dying. I don't want anybody from either side suffering. That's what it comes down to. But, the point of contention is who's at fault. And objectively, it is Israel are the ones being at fault. And the ball is in their court. They're the ones that can stop this shit by simply stopping this shit right now. And that's what it comes down to. And it's amazing. That will get you in trouble. That statement is considered just par for the course and not within the realms of mainstream conversation. That I find offensive. That if Israel stops, then peace would be possible. And that's going to be considered controversial for some folks. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. And, Israel better stop this shit. If they want to continue as a country, they better stop this shit because, what's happened, what's been happening, they're losing favor among nations around the world that were supporting Israel for decades. People who were previously Zionists walked away from that movement because of what has been going on by Israel. I mean, it's just, what's been going on is a rogue state today. And, you remember Netanyahu just actually attempted to destroy democracy within Israel way worse than this heritage, this Project 25 bullshit that Trump is pulling here in the United States. Far worse, he tried to abolish the Supreme Court in Israel. The only safeguard in Israel that prevents Netanyahu from doing way worse than what he's doing right now. And yes, it's not unfair to call Netanyahu a dictator. He is. So is the orange man here in the United States, but we're not talking necessarily about the orange man today. The only nice thing I got to say about orange man is that when Biden won in 2020, Netanyahu called Biden to congratulate him. And Trump, being a petty little bitch that he is, was like, how dare he go and call Biden to congratulate him after all I did for him? Well, Netanyahu can fuck off. Maybe for different reasons, Trump, but hey, I'll take that. I'll go and go with Benjamin Netanyahu can fuck off. So just that's okay. That's okay. So, So anyway, I will be back tomorrow. Let's see, I guess tomorrow night around 9 p.m. I'm off on Tuesday, so it's not really an official day to do a video. So I am going to do a live stream tomorrow. There's always a chance that I could change the schedule, but more than likely I won't. So I'll be back here at 9 o'clock tomorrow night, and we'll be discussing, basically discussing the rift between Kyle Kalinske and Joe Rogan from the perspective of the amazing atheist, because I saw his video last night, and I thought he had a pretty good take on it, and I would like to discuss that. So that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. And so anyway, I want to make sure I got everybody here before I go. So I've seen people do this in other podcasts, so I'll do it here since I'm still under 1,000 subs. So Kameshwari Kate, it's great seeing you. And Cowboy Kitty, same. Great seeing you here. Extra Bulla, always a pleasure. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show, always great. I can't wait to see you do another one. Anonymous, how are you doing over there across the Atlantic? Desert Mantis, is always great seeing you here. Same with Max RJ, is always a pleasure. Game.film, glad to see you here. And we're going to go and talk about having you on my show very, very soon. Let's see. We have here Rabbi Shmuley's used dildo. I don't want to be anywhere near Rabbi Shmuley's used dildo. I'll just leave it at that. Or any dildo. For those who are into it, let your freak flag fly, as the saying goes. Let's see, we have here Peace Dub. How are you doing today? Cisco, PHS Cisco, how are you doing? Let's see, we have here Gray Patine. Glad to see you here as well. We have scrolling through, making sure everybody's taken care of. Scrolling through, Stephanie, great seeing you here. Snipe Hunter, great seeing you here as well. And to everybody else watching, I will see y'all next time. I will conclude by saying, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment any ways you disagree with what I have to say. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. And remember to subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show, and on all my platforms. Reject corporate media. Free and pardon Ed Snowden. Free Palestine. Free healthcare for all. I would say free Mahmoud Khalil at this point. And also to stand firm for the First Amendment. Free speech preservation is important to us all. And until next time, fuck Benjamin Netanyahu. I will talk to you all later. And also fuck Rabbi Shmuley and fuck Pierce Morgan. Until next time, folks, I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.